guys, it's Olivie Blake, and this is me not writing. This is also Olivie Blake is not feeling well. I am, as the adults say, under the weather. This has been a thing now ever since he works with children, high school children. He brings home high school germs, which apparently I'm no longer immune to. And this is the second time I've been sick in 2 weeks. I've got some sort of like chest situation going on. It's a whole thing. But you know what? I still want to like live my life, or pretend to live my life, pretend like walking my dog does not wind me. But this is a fantasy I'm living in, but I'm gonna do it with wine, is basically what I'm trying to say. My mom is like a huge believer in vitamins. When I was growing up, she would make me take an iron pill, a calcium pill, a glass of orange juice, and a banana. This is all the stuff I would have to have in the morning, plus whatever she wanted me to have for breakfast. I don't know. It was a whole thing. It was a whole like bargaining thing to get out of bananas. I really used to hate bananas. Pretty much anytime you have to have something every single day, it's a problem. You know what? I missed it. It's a glass of milk, a glass of orange juice, a banana, an iron pill, a calcium pill, and a multivitamin. Anyway, my mom's got this whole thing about vitamins. My husband, on the other hand, has also a whole thing about vitamins in that he does not believe in them. He's always telling me about like how much of a vitamin your body can actually use, and he was saying something about like 3%. I don't know, he said 3%, something about 3% getting absorbed, and like mostly you're just like, he was like, it just makes your pee that much more expensive. And I just stopped listening after a while. So that's why I don't really know what he's saying. Like when he says it, there's science, but when it just goes into my head and then goes back out. The point is, I'm sick again. My mother is telling me to take vitamins. My husband is telling me do not take vitamins. They're not real. And I just don't want to be sick. I've just been like eating oranges. Like obsessively eating oranges. So anyway, we'll just jump in here. Okay. In your next video, can you talk about how to figure out what career path is right for you? Last year I had applied to the nursing program at my school and got waitlisted, so I moved on and was set to transfer to a school that had a teacher of the deaf certification. I'm really passionate about ASL. But I just got a letter saying I got into the nursing program for the fall, and while I really wanted it at the time I applied, I don't know if I still do, and I don't know which to choose. Well, I always feel like you have a better chance of having sort of an informed instinct when you are standing there. So I would always recommend talking to someone in the nursing program, since it's already at the school you go to and you probably have an idea of what it's like to go there. And then going to wherever the other school is that you would get the certification. I think if you channel it well enough, you can envision yourself in these two places, and most likely something is going to feel more right to you. Also, I think probably the most important thing I could tell you is that you can change your mind. If you pick one and it's not the right thing, it's inconvenient, but you can change your mind. My best friend was in a doctorate of psychology program, and then he changed his mind, and I think a year in, 2 years in, he changed his mind because he didn't want to do clinical stuff. He didn't want to study the brain so much as he wanted to work with people. He was doing a lot of works with addicts and veterans, and he ended up choosing a master's of social work instead, and that's what he does now, and he loves it. So you can pick one, find out it doesn't work, and do another thing. I get why you wouldn't want to do that, but just to remind you, that is still technically an option. Also an option is neither of these things. They're pretty different. Great, there's construction going on outside. So these things are pretty different, and if you can't actually choose between these two things, then maybe you need to think about the possibility that neither of them are the thing that you want and you were just settling for one or the other. I mean, it is very hard to know what you want to do with your life. So don't think about it as what you want to do with your life. Think about what are you willing to spend the next 2 to 5 years doing? What would you rather learn to do? What kind of lifestyle would you rather have while you're learning to do it? What kind of people do you want to work with? Can you meet other people that are in the program, in either program? Can you meet the people who are currently in those programs and see if you vibe with them? That was one thing with my best friend. He didn't feel much of a vibe with his classmates in his doctorate program. But then in his Master's of Social Work, he feels like they're his people. Like he said, he couldn't really describe it, but he just got the sense that they were like-minded, that they cared, they had the same passions, they cared about the same things. And that has been really, like, you can see on his face how much different he feels about this. So don't think of it as choosing like a path so much as deciding how you want your path to look while you go through life. Yeah, I would recommend meeting with someone in either program and then going from there. I guess just go check out what the vibe is. And then channel whatever your sense of the future and what it could look like and what it could be, and if you can see yourself there in either program. I guess, you know, if you need to create 2 different AUs of your life where you kind of see how you feel when you're in them, imagine what your life is going to look like and choose the one that feels more right. I think that there probably is something that feels more right, and there's probably something that's clouding your, I wouldn't say clouding your judgment, but maybe there's a reason. Like your past self wanted to be in the nursing program, so now being accepted into it is very compelling because it's something that you used to want. But is this something that current you wants? I think if you ask current you and imagine future you doing it, you'll get the answer, or something close to an answer. So now I'm going to read you a little bit of One for My Enemy, which is coming out this week. When this comes out, it will be the week of my birthday, January 31st, which is when this book comes out. So I wanted to read you a little snippet. This is a scene between 2 of the main characters, Sasha and Lev, and I'm not going to give you too much information about them. You don't really need to know too much information about them outside of what's in this scene. But yeah, I hope you like it. I should say that, so Sasha has gone to a group meeting at a bar. It's a whole thing. She's in business school with this guy, Eric, who's hitting on her, and she's telling him to leave her alone. "Let go of me," Sasha seethed again, turning her head away as Eric tried to coax her back. He was insisting, once again, on something like the importance of their project, or, less flatteringly, her inability to be reasonable. "I said let go." "Hey," came the voice of the guy from inside the bar, the word emerging like a slap in the cold January air. "She said to let go, asshole. Does she sound like she's joking?" Sasha groaned internally, not bothering to turn around as Eric stiffened, annoyed. "Ignore him," she informed Eric, before winding up and punching him hard in the nose, remembering at the last second not to tuck her thumb into her palm, something her sister had taught her when she was 12, just as a precautionary measure, and splintering the bone of his face beneath her knuckles. "There," she said, in the same moment that Eric doubled over, howling with pain. "Well, I'm going home. Email me whatever it is you want to do for the project. I don't care. I'm done with you. And as for you," she said, wobbling slightly and flexing her fingers as she pivoted to face the dark-haired, lean-hipped, busybody so-and-so from the bar, "I said I could handle it." The guy from the bar froze, thunderstruck. "I suppose you can," he mused, as Eric let out another groan, straightening with his hand pressed to the trail of blood dripping from his probably broken nose. "Come on, Sasha," Eric grunted as she turned away, heading unsteadily down the block. "It's starting to snow. You're going to freeze out here. Let me call you a cab at least," he was calling after her, voice muffled into his palm. "Or, I don't know, let me take you home." "Oh, shut up, you asshat," muttered the guy from the bar, his footsteps beating against the pavement as he hurried to catch up to her. "Hey, Sasha," he called out, uncertain. "Just, look, at least give me your hand." "What? No," Sasha snapped at him, pivoting to face him and then promptly swatting him away. "Look, I'm fine, okay? It's not a long walk. It's just a couple of blocks to the subway." "Yeah and no," the guy said firmly. "I'm walking you there. Have you seen you? You practically fell in the street just now." Though that left hook was impressive, he added tangentially, looking as though he hadn't previously wanted to admit it, but was powerless not to. I really did not see that coming. Well played, honestly. Well, how very noble of you, Sasha informed him stiffly. But listen, I didn't want Eric touching me, and I definitely don't want you touching me, so you can just go, thanks. God, you're infuriating. Hold still, he instructed, and reached briskly for her hands, blowing across the tops of her knuckles. There, he said, abruptly releasing her as Sasha, who hadn't noticed until that precise moment that she'd forgotten her gloves at the bar, felt a rapid tinkling in her fingers, warmth immediately alighting through them. Ah, she thought dizzily. So that's that, then. She wondered if she should have been surprised, or maybe would have been if she were a little less drunk. She remembered, too, that whoever he was, he had gotten a drink fairly quickly, and that was hardly what she'd come to understand of Manhattan bartenders. Clearly, the man was either a witch or a hell of a lay. Now you can walk as long and as thanklessly as you want, the witch from the bar said, jarring her out of her thoughts. Have a nice night, Sasha. It's been an absolute joy. I can do that too, you know, she informed him stubbornly, conjuring a flare of sparks in her palm. See, she prompted, watching his eyes widen. I told you I can take care of myself. Jesus, what are you? Come on, he growled, ushering her around the corner and out of sight from the lingering patrons outside the bar's busy doorway. You do know that's not very subtle, right? I'm just saying, Sasha said, shoving him away. I would have taken care of Eric myself, you know. Could have turned him into a goat, really, if I'd been so inclined. Right, yes, an equally subtle choice. The man. Boy? He looked her age, but carried himself much more forcefully, shook his head, and was something like half laughing, the corners of his mouth quirking upwards at what seemed to be completely against his will. A goat, though, really? Something smaller, I would think. Something to crush underfoot, like a bug. Well, you took that to a dark place, Sasha informed him, swaying slightly. Anything to sober up? She asked hopefully, grimacing. I've never had to use a spell like that before. Nothing I've got on me, he said, looking mildly regretful, which she thought was sort of nice. Sympathetic, at least. I'm Lev, by the way. Sasha, she supplied, giving him a bleary-eyed glance. With the moonlight behind him, Lev's face was obscured slightly, and she tried to recall what she'd seen of it in the bar. The dark eyes, the cynical shape of his mouth, the motion of his brow, and the hair she would have thought was black, if not for having seen it change slightly in the light, shifting with the shadows. So, you're a witch, then? Not quite as blatantly as you, but yes, Lev confirmed, and shivered. Seriously, it's cold. Let me walk you home, or to the train. Whatever. Men, honestly. I don't need you to— I know you don't, Lev cut in, groaning. You've made that very clear. You don't need me, and I'm sure the suffragettes are all very proud, but I can't let you stand out here. At that, she grimaced, mildly irritated. Do you live far? He asked. Yes, Sasha said, pivoting to walk away. Bye, Lev, she called over her shoulder, squinting into the dark for a moment before propelling herself forward. She got halfway to the end of the block before she heard a loud growl rip through the night, followed by the sound of half-running footsteps. Listen. I don't know why, but I can't let you leave, okay? Lev insisted, materializing breathlessly at her elbow. Just let me assuage my conscience and come with you for a bit, would you? I have shit to do back there anyway, he added, jerking his head over his shoulder to reference the bar they'd just left. So it'll only be for a few blocks. Meeting someone or something? Sasha asked, and Lev scoffed, his attention cutting askance. Is that your way of asking me if I have a girlfriend? No. Men, honestly. Gross. Gross, Lev echoed. I don't know what that is, he muttered, half to himself. Inaccurate, I hope, but certainly rude at the very least. Oh, shut up. I'm just, she shrugged, not interested. Not interested, Lev said skeptically, and Sasha rolled her eyes. You really just gonna repeat things I say all night? I might have to if they continue to be so hurtful. Why? Are you interested? No, I'm not, Lev insisted. But, you know, I'd appreciate being given the time to decide. Sasha couldn't determine if that was a very odd thing to say or not, but either way, she concluded that he seemed to mean it. Satisfied, she shrugged, offering up a tangent instead. So, what were you doing back there? Alone, she noted, sparing him a telling glance, and his mouth quirked again, a smile working its way out against his will. Is it so strange to be alone? Bars, Sasha informed him, are hardly the ideal location for solitude. She glanced at him again, waiting to see if she'd made him smile. She had, and now the snow was starting to fall more steadily, cresting regally on his not black hair. Well, it was nothing important, Lev assured her, sliding her another glance as Sasha hastily averted her attention to the snow falling on the ground, eyeing the sidewalk's newly powdered sheen. What were you doing? Group project, Sasha made a face. I should have known it was going to be a disaster when Eric suggested we have it in a bar, but she shrugged. It was probably going to be a disaster either way, and now I've punched him. Wonder if that'll affect my grade. Only in a positive way, I'm sure. He deserved it, Lev said briskly, and then frowned. Why are you in college anyway? You're a witch, he reminded her, as if she'd somehow forgotten. It's not like you need it. Well, in a surprising turn of events, getting an education and possessing magic aren't mutually exclusive, Sasha informed him, half stumbling over a crack in the sidewalk and careening briefly into him, shoving him away as he attempted to prop her upright. Can't you do something about this? She demanded, gesturing vaguely to her questionable equilibrium. I could, but obviously it seemed more fun to let you shove me all over Manhattan. I don't get out much, Sasha admitted, pausing briefly to press a hand to her temple, hoping to somehow steady herself that way. Not a fan of drinking, she added at a grumble. Certainly not like that, Lev agreed, holding her back for a second as a cab blitzed through the intersection. Careful, he warned. And this time, glancing down at where his fingers were placed delicately on the inside of her elbow, Sasha didn't shove him away. She gingerly, permitted a nod, letting him steady her. When imminent danger had passed, Lev brought his hand down, but this time, instead of letting his thumb tap rhythmically against his thigh, he held it still, floating in the air between them. It seemed a precautionary measure, in case he might need to use it again, in case he might need to be close to her again. Sasha coughed loudly, shaking herself back to reality. I've got it from here, she informed Lev once they'd crossed the street, gesturing vaguely over her shoulder. Subway's just a few streets over, and I'm fine, I promise. Thanks for your, help or whatever. My help or whatever, Lev echoed skeptically. Nice, Sasha. Real nice. Look, she sighed, as I've told you 1,000 times, I'm fine. Right, extremely fine, he muttered, which is totally obvious considering we were almost just run over by a taxi with absolutely no intention to stop. And I really think you're overestimating the actual work you've put into the situation, she said. I mean, sure, it's nice and all, I guess, assuming you're not just trying to hit on me. I'm genuinely trying to save your life, but if that's not immediately obvious, then I really don't know what I'm supposed to do about it. And look, anyway, my sister would kill me if she saw you with me, or I don't know, at least have 8,000 questions, so should really just let you fall into the street, considering how badly you seem to want to do that. Just too many questions, honestly, it's hardly worth it. I don't know why I'm still here. I guess I should really you should really probably go, they finished in unison. And Sasha made the mistake of looking up, catching Lev's gaze falling on hers in the same motion, with the same sharp intake of breath, the two of them suddenly shivering in the cold. His hair was dusted in flakes of snow, his head still uncovered. Had he ever been wearing a hat? Evidently not. What a gallant idiot. And despite her memory of his constant motion, the twitching of his shoulders and the shifting of his expression, he was standing still now. He was holding her still, she realized, one of his hands carefully propped under her forearm from the motion of turning her towards him. And she blinked, registering the feeling of his fingers pressing into her winter coat. Are you cold? She asked him, and he cleared his throat. Freezing, he assured her. And she nodded gravely, reaching up to brush her charmed fingers against his lips. She waited for a moment, drawing the tip of her index finger back and forth along the line of his mouth, until finally his lips parted, his breath warm and tinged with a smoky hint of whiskey. This, he said, her fingers still hovering above his lips, is what they call mixed messages, Sasha. She blinked, startled, and drew her hand away. Right, she exhaled. Right, of course, sorry, I wasn't. Oh, hell, Lev muttered, and before Sasha could respond, he had pulled her into him, wrapping one arm around her waist to slide his free hand beneath her jaw, tilting her face up towards him. He leaned close, pausing a matter of breaths from her lips, and then he stayed there, his nose poised delicately alongside hers. She felt his swift inhalation like a breeze against her cheek, the pounding of his heart visible beneath the line of his throat. The implication was clear. He'd come as close as he was going to. He'd come close enough to imagine her, to taste the proximity of her in the air between them, but no closer. That was up to her. She paused for a moment in the stillness, in the paralysis between motions, in the cliff edge between what was and what could be, and for a moment she simply luxuriated there, feeling the warmth of his breath against her lips and thinking, foolishly, that she could be satisfied with the magnificence of waiting, until she felt sure, as steadily as his heart pulsing beneath her hand, that she could no longer stand the distance. She brushed her lips against the side of his mouth, hesitant, and then pushed up on her toes, colliding with him. He studied her for a moment before helplessly falling back, yanking her closer as he reached for the wall of the building behind him, content to let brick and stone do the work of keeping them aloft. It felt like drama of the vastest heights, his kiss the overture of all the greatest operas, the summit of every landscape's peak, a rush of tides and fates and furies, and she melted in his arms, warmed by more than just the spell at the tips of her fingers. Almost immediately, his back shoved against the wall, her fingers in his hair, his hands on her waist, and then up to the line of her neck, hands fumbling under coats, and oh, it was much, much too much. Sasha wasn't wholly inexperienced. She knew enough, and had certainly been warned by her older sister 6 times over, to know that when a kiss felt like this, like intoxication itself, like madness, so terribly impious and yet so purely, completely divine, it had to be stopped, and quickly, or else it would set fire to her every thought. "I have to go," she whispered, and felt Lev growl his opposition, his fingers tightening briefly before he released her, permitting her to step away. He sighed, one hand still stretched towards her, and raised the other to curl it around his mouth, filling it with the arguments he clearly understood she didn't want to have. "Are you sure you can make it home by yourself?" he asked after a moment, with a gravity that made her want to laugh. He seemed very serious when he wanted to be, even as he twitched with the need to be closer to her, which seemed appropriate, really, considering that she ached with the need to be closer to him. "Yeah, I can, I promise, but I can give you my number," she suggested, and immediately winced, bothered by the eagerness in her own voice. "If you want, I mean, or not, obviously." "Yes, please," Lev said, mortally serious again. He fumbled into his pocket, removing his cell phone, and placed it in her hand, attention never falling from her face while she clumsily typed in her name and phone number. "Maybe I'll see you then," she said, locking his phone screen and handing it back to him before stepping away, not wishing to make a fool of herself twice over by falling into his arms a second time. "Or, I don't know, maybe. Sasha." He reached out, pulling her close, and kissed her one more time, both his hands curling around her face and drawing lines blindly around the landscape of it, nose, cheeks, lips, as deliberately as if he planned to paint her later and needed to remember the arrangement of what he'd seen. "See you," he exhaled, forcing himself a step back. She felt anything she said in return would be a stupid, incoherent mess, so she tucked her smile into her palm until she could covet it freely later, disappearing around the corner and compelling herself not to look back. So that is a scene from Act 1 of One for My Enemy, which is coming out on Thursday, which is also my birthday. So if you've ever wanted to do anything for me, you can talk to people about my book. You can even buy my book if you want to go all out. So I'll probably update this with a link to the paperback and the ebook, which are coming out the same day. Illustrations by Little Kimura. She's also doing the cover this round. I'm really excited about this book. Yeah, it's more of a family drama, which I sometimes have fun with. You guys might know I sometimes have fun with that. It's got a lot of romance and a lot of revenge. It's, I would say, pretty different from the stuff that I've written before in that it's a little bit more of a drama. It's definitely closer to Lovely Tangled Vices than to Masters of Death, which to me is more of a comedy. I've said that before. But yeah, so anyway, I hope you guys like it. It is an honor to have written it and to offer it to you, and I hope you enjoy it. Yeah, well, I'm going to probably... think more about vitamins, eat some more oranges, sort something out. Anyway, this has been me, Olivie Blake, not writing. And I'll see you next week.